It's 2 a.m. You're in bed. Your phone is in your hand. You've watched the same 3 videos already. You don't even want to watch them again, but you keep scrolling anyway. Here's the thing. This feeling, this restless, empty, I need something but I don't know what feeling, it's not a modern problem. It's not a you problem. It's a 300-year-old's firmware issue that your ancestors had long before electricity, long before language, long before anyone had a word for it. No doom scroll, no refresh button, no 47 unread emails, just fire, darkness, and the sound of someone snoring 5 feet away. So when did ancient humans first feel bored? The short answer is, earlier than you think. The long answer will change how you look at your phone. Here's the assumption most people carry into this question. Ancient humans were too busy surviving to get bored, running from predators, hunting mammoths, trying not to die of a tooth infection. No time for existential emptiness. Here's the thing nobody tells you. That's completely wrong. Anthropologist Marshall Salins made a radical argument in his 1972 book, Stone Age Economics. After studying contemporary forager groups, including the Kungsan of the Kalahari Desert, he found they worked, on average, somewhere between 15 and 20 hours a week to meet their food needs. The rest of the time? Rest. Socializing. Play. He called them the original affluent society. Not because they had a lot of stuff, but because they had a lot of time. More free time than you have. Way more. And no Netflix to fill it. So the question isn't whether ancient humans had time to be bored. They had plenty of it. The real question is, what was happening in their heads during all that time? That's where the archaeological record gets genuinely strange. Let's go back 75,000 years. South Africa. A cave called Blombos. On the cliffs overlooking the Indian Ocean. Archaeologist Christopher Henshelwood and his team from the University of Bergen have been excavating here since the 1990s. What they found changed the conversation about early human cognition. Not weapons, not animal bones. Pieces of ochre, a soft red rock, carefully engraved with geometric patterns, zigzags, cross-hatching, deliberate, abstract designs that served no survival function whatsoever, and perforated shells, dozens of them, worn as beads, the oldest confirmed jewelry on Earth. Let that sit for a moment. Someone, 75,000 years ago, sat down, picked up a rock, and decided to make it beautiful. Nobody asked them to. Nothing was chasing them. They just had time. And they used it to make something that meant nothing, except that it was theirs. That's the earliest evidence we have of a brain with enough idle capacity to create art. And an idle brain, a brain looking for something meaningful to do with its power, is a brain that can feel bored. The record may go further back. Researchers continue to find new sites, but Blombos gives us a reasonable lower bound. The neurological conditions for boredom have been with us for at least 75,000 years. Probably longer. Now jump forward. Way forward. Egypt and Syria, around 380 CE. A monk named Evagrius Ponticus is sitting in the desert. He's supposed to be praying. Instead, he's staring at the sun moving slowly across the sky. He doesn't want to read. He doesn't want to work. He doesn't want to do anything, and somehow that makes it worse. He feels like everything is pointless, like God has abandoned him, like he might as well just leave. He has a name for this. He calls it acedia, from the Greek akidia, no caring, the noonday demon. Evagrius lists it as the 8th deadly sin, later merged into sloth when the list got trimmed to 7. He describes it in detail that reads less like a theological text and more like a modern clinical diagnosis of boredom. The inability to concentrate, the restlessness, the sense that something is missing but you can't name it. This is the oldest detailed written description we have of what we now call boredom. 380 CE. 1400 years before Charles Dickens used the word boredom for the first time in English, in Bleak House, 1852, according to the Oxford English Dictionary. The concept is ancient, the word is not, which tells you something. So boredom has been haunting the human mind for at least 1,600 years of documented history, and almost certainly far longer. But where does it actually come from, biologically? That's where things get really strange. In the early 2000s, neuroscientist Marcus Rakel at Washington University in St. Louis noticed something odd in his brain scan data. When he asked participants to do nothing, just lie still in the fMRI machine and let their minds wander, A specific network of brain regions lit up, not random areas, a consistent, coordinated network that activated reliably whenever the brain was idle. He called it the default mode network. The DMN. Here's the kicker. The DMN doesn't rest when you rest. It activates. It's your brain's background process, running self-referential thought, imagining the future, processing social dynamics, searching for patterns and meaning. The moment external demands drop, the DMN takes over. It's like your mental screensaver, except it's not peaceful. It's searching. Boredom, in this framework, is what happens when the DMN is running but can't find a worthy task. Your brain is looking for a problem. There isn't one. And that mismatch between your brain's processing capacity and the available stimulation is the experience of boredom. Psychologist Mihai Csikszentmihalyi described the same thing from a different angle. In his research on flow states, those moments of complete absorption in a task, he found that boredom sits at the opposite end of the spectrum. Flow happens when your skill level matches your challenge level. Boredom happens when your skills exceed the challenge. Your brain is underutilized, and it knows it. Which brings us to a 2014 study that is either hilarious or terrifying, depending on how you look at it. Researchers Timothy Wilson and colleagues at the University of Virginia put participants in a room for 15 minutes with absolutely nothing to do. No phone, no book, no paper, just a chair, four walls, and their own thoughts. 2/3 of men and 25% of women chose to press a button that delivered a mild electric shock to themselves, multiple times, rather than sit quietly for 15 minutes. One man shocked himself 190 times. Your brain does not like to be alone with itself. It never has. Your ancestors just had fire, a flickering, unpredictable light source that kept the DMN occupied for hours. We swapped that for TikTok. Same mechanism, slightly different algorithm. Here's what all of this adds up to, and this is the part people get wrong about boredom. We treat it like a failure, a sign of weakness or laziness, or a broken attention span. We've built an entire industry around eliminating it. Streaming services, social media feeds, infinite scroll. The whole architecture of modern entertainment is designed around one goal. Make sure you never have to sit with your own thoughts. But according to Peter Toohey, whose 2011 book, Boredom, A Lively History is one of the most thorough explorations of the subject, boredom isn't a malfunction. It's a signal, a biological prompt, a message from your nervous system that says, the current situation isn't meeting your needs. Find something better. John Eastwood at York University defines boredom as wanting to be engaged but being unable to find anything satisfying. Notice what that means. You're not empty, you're full of desire, of capacity, of potential energy, and you can't find a worthy outlet for it. Your brain isn't broken, it's overqualified. Let that sit for a moment. The people at Blombos Cave 75,000 years ago, they felt something. That same restless, searching, I need something feeling, and they picked up a rock and made art. The monks in the Egyptian desert felt it, and they built entire spiritual disciplines around learning to sit with it, to understand what it was asking of them. Boredom, at its core, is your brain refusing to accept that the present moment is the best you can do. It's the engine behind every painting, every scientific question, every philosophy, every story ever told. Every great human achievement started with someone who was bored with what already existed. Your ancestors were bored in Blombos Cave, and they started making art. You get bored at 2 a.m., and you either open TikTok, or you write something, build something, think something new. The impulse is identical. The firmware is 300,000 years old. The outlet just changed. Which brings us to the twist. We've spent the last 100 years trying to eliminate boredom entirely, and that might be the most expensive mistake we've ever made. Here's the irony. Boredom is a signal, a precise, evolutionary signal telling your brain to seek something more meaningful, and we have dedicated the most sophisticated technology in human history to making sure you never have to receive it. Your phone checks for novelty 144 times a day on your behalf. That's the average according to industry research, though the number varies. Every notification, every refresh, every algorithmically optimized scroll is doing the same thing the DMN is trying to do. Find something worth paying attention to. The difference is, your phone does it without ever letting the signal register. You get the dopamine hit. You don't get the message. Think about what your ancestors had instead. a campfire, which, it turns out, does something neurologically interesting. The flickering, unpredictable light of a fire engages the DMN at low intensity without overwhelming it. It gives your background processor just enough to chew on. Psychologists have found that watching fire reliably lowers blood pressure and induces a meditative state. People have been staring into flames for 300,000 years, not because they had nothing better to do, but because it was exactly the right amount of stimulation for a brain like ours. We swapped that for a screen and called it progress. Your ancestors sat around a real fire with real people, feeling something real, even if that something was boredom. We sit alone with a screen that delivers a synthetic version of the same experience, optimized for engagement rather than meaning. The For You page isn't doing something new. It's doing what fire did for 300,000 years, keeping the default mode network occupied. The difference is, fire was free, and it didn't make anyone feel worse about themselves after 45 minutes. So what do you do with all of this? Here's what the research actually suggests, and what Evagrius Ponticus figured out in a desert 1600 years ago, the hard way. Don't kill boredom immediately. Sit with it. Even for a few minutes. Your DMN is running a search. If you interrupt it every time with a scroll or a video or a notification, you never find out what it was looking for. You just reset the clock and start over. That's why you can spend 3 hours on your phone and feel emptier than when you started. You satisfied the craving for novelty without ever addressing the underlying signal. The next time that restless, searching feeling arrives, don't reach for your phone. Sit with it. Not forever, not even for long. Just long enough to hear what it's trying to say. Your brain has been doing this for 300,000 years. It's better at it than the algorithm. Your ancestors were bored around a fire 300,000 years ago. They didn't reach for a screen. They reached for each other. And then they started painting caves, telling stories, and inventing everything that came after. The impulse that's making you doom scroll at 2 a.m. is the same impulse that built civilization. You just have to let it run long enough to find out where it wants to go. When was the last time you let yourself be truly bored? No phone, no screen, nothing at all, and actually stayed with it? Let me know in the comments. I'm genuinely curious what your brain came up with. And if you want to keep pulling on this thread, the next video is right there.